Well, the chip shortage has been in the news quite a bit these days, and at this point, it's become a fact of life for those of us in gaming and PC building, and actually so many other areas of life. And I think it's time that we adapt to it. I don't think at this point it's useful constantly complaining about it, and yet, it seems like every week I see articles or videos where gamers and hobbyists just complain, and they throw out a few standard arguments. One is the all variations of it's BS that we can't buy these consoles. Why is it so difficult? Or they critique crypto miners. They say that miners are ruining everything for the rest of us and they want cryptocurrency to crash. Or there's the familiar critique that retail outlets should build ordering systems that are fairer and that combat the use of bots. And you know what? All of these points are true, but sadly, they don't really matter in the larger scheme of things. All of the companies hit by the shortage, certainly in the gaming space and beyond, they're greedy. They know their products will sell out regardless of what they do. So why do anything? Why incur costs to ramp up your production capacity when you're already making money hand over fist? I mean, check out NVIDIA's latest earnings report. Why invest money in making an ordering system fair when you can invest nothing and sell out instantly? Greed, geopolitics, resource constraints will, by all accounts, mean that this shortage will last into 2022 and possibly beyond. And you know what? I've argued in some other videos that I think beyond the actual shortage, gamers are being and have been habituated to a model of scarcity as part of an overall marketing strategy. It was happening before the pandemic via digital scarcity and in-game economies, or artificial scarcity via deliberately constrained production. Think about the Nintendo mini consoles, just to name one rather prominent example. And I think this mindset will be only intensified into the future. So I don't think it's realistic to assume that prices will return to pre-pandemic levels. I mean, yes, eventually the new consoles will be available for MSRP or at a slight premium via mandatory bundles, which seem to be a thing nowadays. But if you want a 3000 series graphics card from NVIDIA or a 5000 series AMD CPU, I think those items will probably lock in long-term price increases. And honestly, we'll see the bot and scalping issue reoccur with every subsequent release of new hardware. I think at this point, it is a business model and it's not going away. So unless you want to spend unreasonable amounts of money on these products, I think it's time for gamers and hobbyists to think about other ways of passing the time during the shortage. So I think rather than be irritated, this is an opportunity. It's a unique opportunity to actually appreciate our lives in gaming and our lives beyond. So I want to share some ideas of what I think people could do to just pass the time. So firstly, and I think this is a rather obvious point, just appreciate what you have. Those of us in the retro gaming community have huge backlogs of physical games, more than we could ever possibly play. And there have been new devices that have come onto the market that allow you to kind of play your old consoles on modern televisions with pretty good results, whether it's Mister, OOSC, the new RetroTink products. They all make gaming on the original hardware that we have using physical media slightly better. So what I've been considering doing, certainly as the summer rolls around, is to find 3 games that I've been meaning to play and complete them. And I think when you talk about maybe people have more free time or vacation time over the summer, that will hold you over instead of buying a new console. Now, you add to this digital backlogs. For me, it's primarily on Steam, but obviously PlayStation 4, the Nintendo eShop, Xbox, certainly if you have their Game Pass subscription. All these things open up a world of possibilities, and throw in emulators into that mix. And I think many of us could, and I certainly think I, at least, could never buy another new game or piece of new hardware again, and I would always have something new to play for the rest of my life. So I think it's time to kind of move away from the mindset of constraint, the mindset of deprivation, that we don't have these new products that we want to buy and these new systems that we want to play. And let's embrace what we have collected over the decades. I've been doing that this spring, and it's been surprisingly fulfilling. I also think it could be a good opportunity to learn some new skills, whether in tech or gaming or beyond. Take the hours you would have invested in gaming on new hardware and learn something new. Now, I realize it's harder to do with kids who really want those consoles, but it's still possible. I mean, maybe you could say, hey, instead of playing games, buy your kids a PC or a subscription to different coding camps and things like that, and they could learn to program their games, or they could learn how to build PCs. I think there's a number of different ways to engage children in technology without having these new systems, which ultimately are kind of passive in types of engagement. You're just buying and playing. Maybe they should start building and creating. Now, I realize that's a corny example, but it does pass the time. I'll give you a personal example. And when the new year started and I realized I wasn't going to get any of these consoles, I took what I would have spent on these new consoles and some games, and I put it into cryptocurrency, not because I wanted to make money, but just because it was something I didn't know anything about. Now, that's poor timing from an investment standpoint, but I didn't make a lot of money. I didn't lose a lot of money, but I just learned about this new facet of financial life. And if that's going to be useful or not, I don't know, but it certainly did pass my time this spring. Another idea would be to get into used or obscure technology. One thing you could do is get into audiophile gear. Of course, I've been a big proponent of that. And during the pandemic, a lot of kind of big spending, high earners really upgraded their AV gear. So if you look on eBay, if you look on AudioGone, there's various sites, certainly Craigslist, where you can find some used audio gear that's pretty good. And I've always thought that upgrading your sound system for gaming is an upgrade that people often overlook. The personal example that I've documented on this channel is that I went on Craigslist and I bought some Ohm speakers from the early 80s, maybe late 70s, and I found that this company still sells parts for them, so I rebuilt them. You could find my discussion of this on the channel, but basically, through this project, I have an amazing retro sound system for games. And so when I play the old consoles, they have this vintage feel to them now. To say nothing of the fact that most everything I play on these speakers sound very good. So refurbish technology that you buy, rebuild technology that you have, maybe learn to mod consoles. I think all of these things are really, really useful. Another idea would be to rework your gaming space, your man cave, game room, home theater room. You could reorganize your collection, alphabetize it, organize it in a better way. I did that recently. You could catalog your collection. There's one app in particular, I think it's called Game Eyes, where you can just scan the barcodes, and you really learn about the value of what you have. That takes an evening or two, depending on the size of your collection. You could buy new furniture for your game room, remodel it in some way, clean it up. I think that is a real value add to your space. If you're spending a lot of time with your collection, why not make the space in which you engage with your collection as comfortable as possible? And lastly, I would say take this opportunity and take the money that you would have invested and the time that you would have spent with this new hardware and invest it into new hobbies. Find some other kinds of pursuits, maybe outside of technology, outside of gaming. It could be something that you've always wanted to do. I bought a decent bike. This was before COVID, but nonetheless, I got involved in biking, and I'm not an athlete, and I'm not doing long rides or marathons, but it was just something fun from my childhood that I kind of lost touch with as an adult, and it's been really rewarding. So find something, there's any number of businesses and companies that are competing aggressively for your time, for your engagement, and for your dollars. And I think this last point is critical because if we want change in the tech space, if we want change in the gaming space, say on how you pre-order these products and your access to them, that change is only going to happen when the big players feel threatened. If there's a threat that customers have moved away and moved on from the stranglehold of always needing the latest tech, that's when we might see something different occur. I mean, imagine Sony or NVIDIA's reaction if they did a massive restock on whatever their hottest items are and none of it sells through. Yes, that's unrealistic, but it could potentially be a successful tool in forcing companies, gaming companies, tech companies, to care more about the customer experience and less about pinching every penny possible. And yet, even if you did get a PS5 or an Xbox One X right now, there isn't much to play, and I would say, is it really a privilege to pay for microtransactions at 120 FPS? A lot of things could be improved in the gaming space, and I think showing them that we're not slaves to their business model is the first step in that process. So I think the chip shortage should ideally be seen as an opportunity for customers to discover new areas of fun, digital or otherwise, while we wait for availability on these items, and we wait for availability that's fair and reasonably priced. Let's give these companies an incentive to win back our business rather than an incentive to further exploit our insecurity, our impatience, and our impulsivity.